They played combat footage to intimidate her Part 1, First Contact and Intimidation Tactics. The station hung in empty space like a metal spider frozen in time. Inside the conference chamber on the third level, Commander Lisa Murphy waited alone. The room was cold. The walls were smooth and black, built by the Coalition long before this meeting was scheduled. They did not trust other species in their presence, so they had constructed these neutral chambers across the galaxy. The chambers were designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. Lisa sat in a chair made of something that was not quite metal and not quite crystal. Around her, the walls began to glow. Holograms filled the space above the central table. The images were chaos. Fire and death filled every corner of the projected space. The first image showed a human colony on the planet 442b. The city had been peaceful only hours before. Lisa recognized the layout from the briefing files. Hospitals, schools, residential blocks arranged in careful rows. Then the weapons arrived. The images cut to the moment of impact. Entire city blocks vanished. The ground became liquid fire. Thousands of lives ended in seconds. Lisa did not move. She did not look away. She watched the destruction with the same expression someone might watch a rainstorm. The hologram shifted. Now it showed a human military fleet, 12 ships arranged in defensive formation. They were advanced for human technology, armor-plated weapon systems state-of-the-art, shields that could deflect plasma and radiation. None of it mattered. A battleship appeared on the hologram, a thing so massive that it made human vessels look like toys. The weapons fired once. The entire human fleet stopped existing. More images flowed across the chamber. Battles, invasions, civilizations crumbling under assault. They had conquered 17 planets in the last 5 years. Each world had tried resistance. Each world had failed. The message was clear. They were unstoppable. Humanity should accept this fact and surrender peacefully. The hologram faded. The walls stopped glowing. Lights in the chamber came up slowly, revealing the ambassadors. OK was the lead diplomat. He was a being of crystalline structure, roughly humanoid in shape but wrong in every detail. His limbs were too long. His eyes were too many. He did not have a mouth, but sounds came from somewhere inside his body, translated by devices that made his words appear in Lisa's mind as English. Behind OK stood 3 other, each one slightly different, each one built for different purposes. One was muscular, built for command of military operations. Another was thin and precise, clearly an analyst. The last was older, its crystal body clouded with age, marked with symbols Lisa did not recognize. OK made a sound that the translator rendered as satisfaction mixed with contempt. The ambassador stepped closer to Lisa. "We have shown you the extent of our power, the inevitable conclusion of any conflict between our species, and the futility of resistance," OK said. The words appeared directly in Lisa's mind, not spoken aloud but transmitted through the translation technology implanted in her skull. "We offer humanity a choice. Accept absorption into the Coalition. Your worlds will be governed by our laws. Your people will work for our benefit. Your technology will be seized and analyzed. But your species will survive. You will not be destroyed as previous species have been destroyed. This is mercy. This is the only option that keeps humans alive." Lisa watched with steady eyes. She was a tall woman, dark-haired, with scars on her face and hands that told stories of battles and failures and survival. She had been born on Earth. She had lived in space for 23 years. She had commanded ships and lost crew members. She had made decisions in split seconds that meant the difference between life and death. The thought she would break. They thought the images of destruction would shatter her will. Lisa yawned. It was not a small yawn. It was long and deep, the kind of yawn that someone makes when they are bored and tired. She stretched her arms above her head, moving her shoulders in slow circles. When the yawn finished, she looked directly at OK. "That was your intimidation display?" Lisa asked. Her voice was calm. It was the voice of someone discussing the weather. The recycled footage and the theatrical presentation. The 4 stopped moving. The chamber became completely silent. Ambassadors did not yawn during intimidation displays. Ambassadors did not ask casual questions about carefully prepared psychological warfare tactics. Something was wrong. Something was different about this human. The muscular made a sound of anger, but OK raised one of his 2 long limbs to silence him. "Explain yourself, human," OK said. The words came slower this time, with less certainty. Lisa leaned back in her chair. She let the silence stretch out, making the wait for her answer. She was buying time, thinking through the implications of what she had just said. She had revealed that she knew something. She had tipped her hand, but it was worth it. She had shown them that their standard tactics would not work. That combat footage of the colony destruction, Lisa said. The city layout on 442B? I have seen that city. I was there 15 years ago during a diplomatic mission. The image you showed me was from our historical records. The attack you displayed happened 8 years ago. You are showing us our own battles and pretending they are fresh victories. That is poor intelligence work. OK made a sound that might have been anger or surprise. The analyst moved closer, whispering something to the older ambassador. The older one's crystalline surface seemed to darken. Furthermore, Lisa continued, that human fleet you destroyed in your second display, the frigate configuration is obsolete. We stopped building ships in that design 6 years ago. You are showing us battles that are years old and mixing them with footage we do not even recognize. You are trying to intimidate me with information that is inaccurate and outdated. This changes nothing, OK said, but there was doubt in his translated words now. We remain the strongest military force in this region of space. Resistance remains futile. Lisa stood from her chair. She was tall, but the towered over her. She did not care. She walked toward OK, not rushing, not threatening, just walking with the confidence of someone who had faced many things and survived all of them. They played combat footage to intimidate her part 2, the weight of human history. They did not leave the chamber. Instead, they requested refreshment. Lisa found it interesting that beings made of crystalline substance needed to consume anything, but she did not ask. She simply waited while small devices descended from the ceiling and delivered substances to each ambassador. The refreshment looked like nothing Lisa had ever seen. Colors moved inside the containers without any visible cause. They did not drink or eat. They simply held the containers and the colors moved faster. OK turned his attention back to Lisa. You claim to have something real to tell us, the ambassador said. Speak, but know that deception will be noted and consequences will follow. Lisa nodded. My first deployment, she began, was 23 years ago. I was a junior officer on a ship called the USS Endeavor. We were conducting deep space exploration. The mission was to map stellar phenomena and collect data on radiation patterns near black holes. Nothing combat-related, nothing military, just science. The analyst made a clicking sound. This irrelevant history holds no tactical value, it said. It holds everything, Lisa replied. Because that mission went wrong. It went wrong in ways that the coalition has never experienced. She walked to the center of the chamber. They watched her. Lisa closed her eyes, remembering events from 2 decades past. The Endeavor had a crew of 97 people, Lisa said. We were 6 months into a planned 12-month mission. Sensors detected an unusual energy signature near a black hole designated SR 4821. The mission commander ordered us to investigate. We brought the ship closer. The signature grew stronger. I was monitoring the sensors. I noticed something wrong with the readings. Lisa opened her eyes and looked directly at OK. The energy signature was not natural, she continued. It was artificial. It was a trap, an old automated weapon left behind by some civilization that had died centuries before we arrived. We never found out who built it or why it was there. We never had time to study it. The weapon activated. It fired on the Endeavor before we could raise shields. The first impact destroyed 2 sections of the ship, killed 16 people instantly, killed 12 more in the decompression that followed. The old made a sound. It was a low sound like wind through a cave. That is tragic, the ambassador said, but it is not relevant military history. It is everything, Lisa said, because the Endeavor was damaged, seriously damaged. The weapon systems were offline. The main engines were destroyed. The artificial gravity failed on 3 decks. We had 17 people in the medical bay, including 12 crew members from the blast. We had no way to escape. The black hole was pulling us closer. Our escape pods would not launch because the magnetic field caused by the black hole would pull them into the singularity. We were dead. All 97 of us were dead, and we knew it. Lisa paused. She walked to the wall and placed her hand against the smooth black surface. But humans do something interesting when they face death, she said. We do not accept it. We do not resign ourselves to fate. We fight. We adapt. We find solutions that should not exist. She turned back to face the ambassadors. The chief engineer, a man named Daniel, realized that if we reversed the polarity of the engine core, we could use the black hole's gravity against itself. He explained this to me. I did not understand it fully, but he was confident. He said it had a small chance of working, and we had zero chance if we did nothing, so I authorized him to try. Did it work? The analyst asked. Lisa heard genuine curiosity in the translated words. No, Lisa said. It failed. The engine core overloaded, exploded, killed Daniel and 4 other engineers, but the explosion gave us momentum. It pushed us away from the black hole just enough to escape the event horizon. We were still damaged. We were still in danger, but we were alive, barely. The older stepped closer to Lisa. Its crystalline body reflected the chamber lights in strange patterns. What happened next? It asked. We had to repair the ship, Lisa said. The main engines were destroyed. We had to build them from salvage and parts that were designed for other purposes. It took 7 weeks. We had damaged hull sections that were losing air to the vacuum. We patched them using materials from the cargo bay that were never intended for that purpose. We modified the medical equipment to compensate for systems that would not restart. We did things that violated every engineering principle and safety regulation that exists. Lisa's voice grew harder. But we did them anyway, because the alternative was death. 27 of our original crew did not make it home, but 70 survived. 70 humans survived something that no species should survive, and we survived because we refused to accept that failure was inevitable. OK made a sound that the translator rendered as contemplation. The muscular made an angry sound. This story is about human primitive methods, the soldier said. They have superior technology, superior ability. This history is irrelevant. It is completely relevant, Lisa said, and her voice carried steel. Because that was my first deployment. I learned that first lesson 23 years ago. I learned that humans are shaped by survival against impossible odds. I learned that we do not surrender when we should. We do not accept defeat when technology says we should fail. We adapt. We find ways to survive that the universe should not permit. She walked directly toward OK. Since that mission, Lisa continued, I have been in 17 combat operations. I have commanded ships through situations that should have resulted in total loss. I have lost crew members. I have made impossible decisions. And every single time, the humans under my command have found ways to survive that logic. The analyst made more clicking sounds. You are describing human irrationality, it said. Emotional decision-making that leads to luck-based outcomes rather than calculated strategy. I am describing human excellence, Lisa said. And I am describing something the Coalition has not encountered because you have never fought a species like us. You have fought civilizations that understand logic and calculation. When you are stronger, they accept defeat. When you have better weapons, they surrender. But you have never fought a species that simply refuses to accept that the battle is over. The old raised one of its limbs. The others fell silent. They played combat footage to intimidate her Part 3, the revelation and strategic blunder. The presentation lasted 14 hours. Lisa did not stop talking. She spoke of operations, of decisions made under pressure, of losses and victories. She described in detail the battle at Station 7, where human forces with inferior firepower had held against a larger enemy by using the station's structure as advantage. She told them about the rescue mission on Europa, where humans had saved a colony of 8,000 by working in environments that their equipment was never designed to handle. She explained how humans learned from every failure and applied those lessons to future challenges. The analyst took recordings. The muscular soldier asked questions about human military doctrine and tactical deployment. The old ambassador sat in silence, processing everything. OK said nothing, but his crystalline body seemed darker than before, as if he was absorbing Lisa's words in a physical way. When Lisa finished speaking, she was exhausted. Her voice was hoarse. Her body ached from standing for so long, but her mind was clear. She had accomplished what she set out to do. She had shown that humanity was not just a primitive species to be conquered. Humanity was something different, something dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with weapons. The analyst approached Lisa. He was the smallest of the built for intelligence work rather than combat or leadership. His voice came slowly, as if each word required careful thought. We must process this information, the analyst said. Request access to your military records. Request detailed data on all human military operations conducted in the last 30 years. Request specifications of all human ships and weapon systems currently deployed in this region of space. Lisa could have refused. She could have claimed that such sensitive information required authorization from Earth Command. She could have stalled or negotiated, but she did something different. She smiled, and then she provided everything the analyst requested. It took 3 hours to transfer the data. The analyst processed it with a speed that was remarkable even for a... Lisa watched his crystalline surface as he worked. She could see the light moving through his body, could see the patterns of color that indicated computation. The mind was processing human military data, comparing it against coalition forces, calculating outcomes. When the analysis was complete, the analyst made a sound that was something between a laugh and an explosion. It was a sound of realization. The muscular soldier stepped forward, angry and confused by the analyst's reaction. "What have you discovered?" OK asked. The analyst gestured, and holographic projections filled the chamber. They showed forces scattered across a massive region of space. The projections showed the coalition's entire military deployment, everything that was publicly known, and everything that Lisa had deduced through intelligence work. The image was staggering. They had a presence in 147 different systems. They had active military operations in 43 zones. They were engaged in containment efforts against 17 different civilian resistance movements. "Our forces are overextended," the analyst said in a flat, clinical voice. "This human woman has provided data that confirms what our internal assessments have indicated for the past 18 months. We do not have sufficient military capability to simultaneously defend our current holdings, conduct expansion operations, and engage a new hostile species with demonstrated tactical excellence." The muscular made an angry sound. "We can still defeat humanity. We have more ships, more weapons, more resources." Lisa stepped forward. All the ambassadors turned to face her. "You can attack us," Lisa said. "You can probably defeat us, but the cost would be significant. Your forces would be further reduced. What happens then to your presence in the Outer Rim? What happens to the colonies you are currently suppressing? What happens when one of the 17 resistance movements you are containing decides to mount an actual offensive instead of defending?" The chamber fell silent. Lisa continued. "I have studied the coalition. I have looked at your history, your expansion patterns, your military strength. You maintain control through reputation. You maintain order through the belief among other species that resistance is futile. But the reputation is beginning to crack. There are whispers in the outer colonies. Species are asking questions. Species are starting to wonder if they are actually as strong as they claim." "This is propaganda," OK said, but there was uncertainty in his words. "No," Lisa said. "This is observation. The coalition expanded too fast. You took too many worlds. You deployed your forces too thin. You created a situation where even a species like humanity with inferior numbers can threaten your stability." The old ambassador made a low sound. He raised his crystalline limb, and every in the chamber immediately fell silent. "Explain your strategic assessment," the old one said. "Explain what you believe humanity should do with this information that you have provided so freely." Lisa took a breath. This was the moment that would define everything that followed. "Humanity does not want war with the coalition," Lisa said. "War would destroy us. But humanity also will not accept absorption. We will not allow our worlds to be taken and our people to be enslaved. So I propose a different arrangement." She walked to the center of the chamber and gestured. A star chart appeared, showing human space and space. A line of demarcation formed between them. "A neutral zone," Lisa continued. "Specific regions where neither the coalition nor humanity will expand. Trade agreements between our species, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense against threats that endanger both of us. You maintain your empire as it is. We maintain our independence as it is. We coexist without conquest. We cooperate without domination." The muscular soldier made an angry sound that the translator rendered as a curse. "Unacceptable," he said. "We show weakness by agreeing to this proposal." "No," Lisa said. "You show strength by showing that the coalition is secure enough to negotiate as equals. Right now, you control a massive territory. Right now, you are powerful. The question is, will you remain powerful, or will you overextend yourselves further by trying to absorb a species that will cost you more resources than you can spare?" OK made a sound that meant consultation. The four moved together, their voices making noises that the translator could not convert to human language. They communicated in ways that transcended words. Lisa understood that they were in rapid, intense discussion about everything she had revealed. The old ambassador finally turned back to Lisa. "We will need to consult with the coalition leadership on the main world," he said. "This decision is too significant for a single negotiating team to make. We will transmit your proposal." "How long will that take?" Lisa asked. 3 months, the analyst said. "The signal must travel through secure channels. The Coalition Council must debate. A decision must be reached." Lisa nodded. "I can wait. I have communications with my government as well, but I want to make one thing clear. Humanity has shown you our military capability, our tactical doctrine, and our strategic positioning. We have given you information that you requested, but know this. If the Coalition they played combat footage to intimidate her Part 4, the negotiation transforms." The waiting period was 37 days, not 3 months. They responded with surprising speed. Their signal came back from the coalition leadership on the Central World, and it contained something unexpected. Instead of refusal, it contained a counterproposal. The coalition was willing to discuss terms. They wanted to continue negotiations immediately. Lisa received the message in her quarters on the station. She read it twice, making sure she understood every detail. Then she made a communication to Earth Command through a secure channel. The signal took hours to reach human space. The response took even longer. But when Earth's military leadership finally transmitted their authorization, it gave Lisa the flexibility she needed. She returned to the conference chamber. This time they were there waiting for her. OK stood at the center, but he was not alone. Beside him stood one who carried the weight of authority in a way that made the other ambassadors seem small. This new being was larger than the others. His crystalline body contained patterns that none of the previous had shown. The analyst introduced him as representative or a member of the coalition's Council of Seven. "We have reviewed your proposal," Or said. His voice was different from the others, deeper and more resonant. "We have analyzed the strategic situation you have presented. We have debated the proposals among our leadership. We are prepared to make a counteroffer." Lisa listened carefully as Or outlined the coalition's position. They would accept a neutral zone. They would establish trade agreements. They would establish cultural exchanges. But they wanted specific terms. They wanted boundaries that extended further into space than Lisa had proposed. They wanted guarantees that humanity would not use the treaty period to expand into areas that considered part of their sphere of influence. They wanted assurances that humanity would not support any of the resistance movements currently opposed to the coalition. Lisa considered each demand carefully. Some were reasonable. Some were designed to test her commitment to genuine peace. Some were attempts to regain ground that Lisa had taken during the initial negotiations. "I will need to consult with Earth Command on these specific terms," Lisa said, "but I can negotiate on several points. The neutral zone boundaries are acceptable if we can establish joint monitoring stations. The trade agreements are possible if they include protections for human commerce. The cultural exchanges are beneficial to both species." "And the resistance movements?" Or asked. "Humanity will not provide military support to resistance movements," Lisa said, "but we will provide humanitarian aid. We will not engage in military action on behalf of other species. But we will not sacrifice our own values by allowing genocide or mass oppression without providing refuge to those who can escape. That is not a failure of commitment to this treaty. That is a commitment to our own principles." Or made a sound that the translator rendered as consideration. "This is acceptable. We can work with these terms." The negotiations continued for 11 days. Lisa worked constantly, communicating with Earth Command, receiving updated instructions, consulting with her own strategic advisors who joined the discussions via secure transmission. They negotiated with their own leadership, sending signals back to the coalition's central world, waiting for responses, debating specific language and treaty obligations. The terms were refined piece by piece. Some agreements came easily, others required intense discussion. There was a moment when negotiations almost broke down over the question of weapons restrictions in the neutral zone, the wanted absolute prohibition. Lisa refused, arguing that humanity needed the ability to defend itself if the agreement was violated. Eventually, they reached a compromise. Both species would be restricted in weapons deployment, but not completely prohibited. The neutral zone would be monitored by joint observation stations staffed by both humans and. By the 11th day, the framework was complete. The treaty had a structure. The terms were written in language that both species understood. What had begun as an intimidation session had transformed into a genuine agreement between two powers that had learned to respect each other's strengths. Or and Lisa signed the document in a ceremonial way, each species adding the signatures and authentication codes that their respective governments required. When it was complete, the representative from the coalition turned to Lisa and made a gesture that transcended species boundaries. It was a gesture of respect. Humanity surprised us, or said. We came prepared to dominate through superior force. Instead, we leave having negotiated with equals. This is unusual for the coalition. We do not often encounter species that refuse to submit and simultaneously refuse to fight a war they cannot win. You found a third path. Lisa nodded. The created situations where weaker species had two choices, submit or be destroyed. You did not anticipate a species that would refuse both. Humans are good at finding ways forward when the obvious paths are closed to us. This will change how the coalition operates, or said. There will be species that see this treaty and believe they can also negotiate. Some will be correct, some will be mistaken. The coalition will have to consider each situation individually rather than assuming that intimidation will always produce compliance. That is how it should be, Lisa said. War should be a last choice, not a first choice. Negotiation should be possible between intelligent species. Or made a sound that the translator rendered as agreement. He extended one of his crystalline limbs, and Lisa understood that this was a gesture of farewell and mutual respect. She took it, feeling the smooth surface of his body against her skin. The touch was cold but not unpleasant. Return to your world, Commander Lisa Murphy, or said. Tell your people that the Coalition recognizes humanity as a significant force in this region of space. Tell them that we view this treaty as a foundation for genuine peace. And tell them that we will honor this agreement. They played combat footage to intimidate her Part 5. The message sent. The journey back to human space took 6 weeks. During that time, Lisa reviewed every moment of the negotiation. She examined what had worked and what had almost failed. She considered the risks she had taken and the decisions she had made. Most of all, she thought about what it meant for humanity to exist as equals with the Coalition rather than as subjects waiting to be dominated. When her ship crossed the boundary into human territorial space, she transmitted a message that would reach every military station, every colonial government, and every human settlement in known space. The message was brief and clear. Attention all human forces and settlements, Lisa's voice came through the communication channels. The treaty negotiation with the Coalition has been completed successfully. The Coalition has recognized humanity's right to independence and sovereignty. A neutral zone has been established between human space and space. Trade agreements are being implemented. Cultural exchanges are scheduled to begin within 6 months. All military forces are to maintain alert status but will not initiate offensive operations. This is confirmed by Earth Military Command and the Coalition Council of 7. The immediate threat to human civilization has been resolved through successful diplomacy and strength. Stand down from combat readiness. Prepare for peace. The message went out across human space at the speed of light, traveling faster than any ship could carry the news. Within hours, hundreds of human settlements received it. The response was overwhelming. Celebrations began on colonies across known space. Families that had feared invasion began to hope for something better. Military personnel who had been preparing for war began preparing for something different. Lisa's ship docked at the primary human military installation orbiting Earth. She disembarked to a reception that she had not expected. Military leaders were waiting. Government officials were waiting. Scientists and strategists wanted to discuss every aspect of the negotiation, but Lisa asked for something different. She asked for time alone in her quarters before the official debriefings. That night, Lisa did something she had not done in years. She pulled up the original combat footage from this presentation. She reviewed the images of destruction, the collapsed cities, the destroyed fleets. But this time, she was looking for something specific. She was looking for the patterns in the footage. As she watched, she began to recognize individual elements. A city layout that matched records from a human colony on 442B. The architectural style was too familiar. The damage patterns were documented in human military records. She ran comparisons on ship designs shown in the combat footage. The frigate configurations were 8 years old, maybe longer. Some of the footage was so old that it predated current human technology by more than a decade. Lisa laughed. It was a long, genuine laugh that came from deep in her chest. They had been showing her recycled footage. They had been mixing human battles with their own victories. They had been padding their resume with old engagements and stolen recordings. It was an ancient tactic, one that humans had used hundreds of times in their own history. It was a sign of weakness, not strength. They were not nearly as invincible as they claimed. They had overextended themselves. They had been forced to intimidate potential enemies because they did not have the resources to conquer them through force. And they had been caught in their own deception by an opponent who had studied their history carefully enough to recognize the patterns. Lisa stored the analysis and made a note to present it to the coalition leadership during the next round of negotiations. But she did not feel angry about the deception. She felt something closer to kinship. They had done what species did when they were afraid. They had bluffed. They had tried to appear stronger than they were, and they had failed because they encountered an opponent who could see through the illusion. Over the following weeks, Lisa attended meetings with government officials and military strategists. She explained the nature of the threat. She explained how the coalition's power was real but limited. She explained the strategic situation that had created the opportunity for negotiation rather than war. She explained how humanity had survived by understanding the enemy's constraints. The lesson here, Lisa told the assembled leadership, is simple. We did not win because we were stronger. We were weaker. We won because we understood that the strength was an illusion. They had expanded too fast and deployed too thin. They maintained control through fear rather than actual military dominance. When we demonstrated that we could not be intimidated, when we showed them that we understood their own strategic weaknesses, they had no choice but to negotiate. One of the government officials asked the question that had been in everyone's mind since the treaty announcement. Commander Murphy, do you believe they will honor this agreement? Or do you believe they will find an opportunity to attack us once they have consolidated their position? Lisa considered the question carefully. I believe they will honor the agreement because breaking it would cost them more than maintaining it. They have 17 different resistance movements to contain. They have colonies across 243 star systems to govern. They have threats from other coalition members who might use weakness as an opportunity to advance their own interests. Humanity represents only one potential problem among hundreds. If the coalition can keep humanity neutral by maintaining trade and cultural exchange, that is far more valuable than the cost of conquest would be. And if circumstances change, the official pressed, if the coalition consolidates its position and no longer needs the treaty, then we will have had time to prepare, Lisa said. Time to strengthen our military, time to build alliances with other species that they have oppressed. Time to create situations where attacking humanity would be even more costly than it is now. The treaty is not about permanent peace. Nothing in human history is permanent. The treaty is about creating a situation where war is not the rational choice, and rational choice is what guides the. Years passed. The treaty held. Trade between human space and territory increased. Cultural exchanges brought scientists and artists to human worlds. Human representatives visited installations. The initial fear that had gripped human civilization slowly transformed into something approaching normal relations between two species that had learned to respect each other's boundaries. Lisa rose through the military ranks. Eventually, she reached the position of Supreme Commander of Human Forces in known space. But she never forgot the lesson of that first negotiation. She never forgot the feeling of walking into a chamber with the most advanced military power in the region and realizing that advanced weapons were less important than understanding the enemy's weaknesses. 20 years after the treaty signing, Lisa stood at an observation window on the primary human military station. She watched the stars the same way she had watched them when departing from the negotiation station. A young officer approached her, someone who had been born after the treaty was signed, someone who had grown up knowing that they existed but were not an immediate threat. Commander, the officer said, we have received a communication from the coalition. Representative Orr is dead. He was one of the oldest and his time has ended. But the new coalition leadership has reaffirmed the treaty. They have stated that the agreement signed by you and Orr remains the foundation of human relations. Lisa nodded. The universe was changing. The players were changing, but the principles remained. Understanding was more valuable than strength. Negotiation was more effective than domination. And humans had survived in a dangerous galaxy not through superior firepower, but through the fundamental human refusal to accept defeat as inevitable. Good, Lisa said quietly. Tell them that humanity reaffirms the treaty as well. Tell them that we remember Or's wisdom in choosing peace over endless conquest. And tell them that humanity will continue to honor the agreement as long as they do the same." The officer saluted and departed. Lisa returned her attention to the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were thriving. Somewhere, human explorers were discovering new worlds. Somewhere, humans were building a future that had almost been lost when they decided to intimidate a species that had learned to refuse intimidation. The first deployment had taught Lisa what it meant to survive. The negotiation had taught her that survival was more than weapons and tactics. Survival was about understanding, adaptation, and the unbreakable human will to persist regardless of circumstance. That was the real power that they had discovered in Lisa Murphy. And that was why the Coalition, despite all their advanced technology and military might, had chosen to negotiate with humanity rather than attempt to conquer it. The cost of breaking it would be too high for the Coalition to bear. Lisa left the chamber an hour later. As she walked through the station corridors toward her ship, she transmitted a detailed message to Earth Command. The treaty was complete. The dangerous negotiation was over. Humanity had survived not by matching this military power, but by understanding this own limitations and using that knowledge as leverage. As her ship departed the station and began the journey back to human space, Lisa stood at the observation window and watched the stars. She thought about the 17-year-old version of herself on the damaged USS Endeavour, refusing to accept that death was inevitable. She thought about how that single moment of human determination had taught her the lesson she needed to teach the Coalition. Humans did not win through superior force. Humans won through refusal to quit, and sometimes that refusal was stronger than any weapon ever created. To attack us, humanity will not fight a conventional war. We will target your weak points. We will exploit your overextension. We will make this conflict cost you far more than it would cost us to allow humanity to exist as an independent species. The old made a sound that might have been respect or might have been anger. Lisa could not tell which. But as the ambassadors prepared to leave the chamber, she felt confident that she had accomplished something significant. She had transformed a military negotiation into a genuine strategic discussion. She had taken this own analysis and shown them that their strength was an illusion. And she had done it by simply telling the truth about human history and human capability. "Tell us more," the old ambassador said. "Tell us everything about your first deployment and what it has taught you about human warfare and survival." Lisa settled into her chair. They moved closer, surrounding her now, listening with an intensity that was almost frightening. She began to speak of the months that followed the Endeavour incident. She described the rescue operation. She described how human crews from other ships came to help repair the Endeavour in the dangerous space near the black hole. She described the innovations born from necessity. And she described how every single decision, every single adaptation, every single moment of human desperation to survive had taught her something about the species she represented. Outside the chamber, the day cycle of the station continued. Ships held their positions, diplomats waited for news, and inside the black-walled chamber, a human woman explained to 4 ambassadors what it meant to be human, what it meant to refuse death, what it meant to adapt to the unsurvivable. And for the first time, the Coalition began to understand that they had made a serious mistake. They had underestimated not human weapons or technology. They had underestimated human will. "I have something to tell you," Lisa said. "Something that might actually interest your Coalition, something real instead of these old images and false presentations. But first, I need to ask you a question, Ambassador. When was the last time you honestly admitted that you did not know something? When was the last time you actually asked questions instead of assuming answers?" OK did not respond immediately. The chamber stayed silent. Outside the station, the stars continued burning in the darkness. The ships waited in their holding patterns. The fate of human space hung in the balance, and it hung on a moment when an old combat veteran had simply yawned at this best attempt at psychological warfare. Lisa had just made a decision that would change everything. She had decided to stop playing the role of a frightened diplomat. She had decided to tell the truth, and she had decided that the Coalition needed to understand that they had made a serious error. They had brought a species that was shaped by combat into a negotiation, and that species had just seen through their deception.